All right. While we let everybody join us, I'll do a little bit of some intros and admin. Really excited to have you here with us on Tech Thursday. Funny enough, the first time we did Tech Thursday was when we launched AmplifyTech many moons ago, and we decided to bring it back in honor of our new partnership with Acumatica. So Tech Thursdays, this is the first of four. All the month of March, we're going to be sharing with you some technology learning. This is a great opportunity for CPD. And in addition, you'll get some exposure to NetSuite and Acumatica that you might not otherwise have the opportunity. So today we're doing an introduction to emerging ERPs. Josh is going to walk through the ERP landscape, why an ERP is still necessary despite the amazing technology that we see in apps these days. We still think an ERP is the solution for many growing businesses. Next Thursday, a week from today, is March 14th, and we're going to do a comparison of emerging ERPs. So we're going to look at NetSuite and Acumatica and what would drive you to purchase one versus the other. And it'll be a very candid discussion because we have no bias. We're absolutely in favor of NetSuite and Acumatica equally. So we're going to have an opportunity to tell you what it is that makes one system a better choice for certain customers and certain clients and what makes the other a better choice. So we're really excited to do that candid conversation next week. On March 21st, we're going to do a live demo of NetSuite. So if you've been thinking about buying NetSuite, but you don't want to commit to the actual sales process, this is your chance to see a demo of NetSuite live without that commitment. So very excited to be able to offer that opportunity to our community. And the same is on March 28th. So if you've been thinking about Acumatica, not wanting to invest your time or commitment to the sales process, but you want to see what it is that it offers, on March 28th, we're going to do a full live demo. So 4 webinars in this Tech Thursday series, and we're really excited to be sharing this information with you. For those of you registered, we are going to make sure that you're registered for all of them. And if you're not able to attend, please note that you can always look at the recordings, which we'll be sharing. So all participants of each of the webinars will get a CPD certificate, as well as the link to the webinar video. So very excited to be able to share all of that with you. Before I pass it off to Josh to get started, I just want to let you know about a few other things that Amplify has going on. So we have the AHA with Amplify series, and the third Tuesday of every month, we do a webinar series there. And March is actually governance and ethics. So obviously, for those of you that are CPAs and you're needing those ethics hours, March is a hot commodity. So be sure to join us on the third Tuesday of March. In April, we're going to have our talent discussion, and we're actually going to bring in some of our own amplifiers from the recruiting team and talk about hot topics and trends and stories they're seeing in talent. And we know that all of you consider your people and your staff the most important thing about your business. So we know that April is going to be a very important topic for everybody. And in May, we're going to have a personal CFO session. So a great opportunity to look at the other side of money, which is the personal wealth and financing. Josh is going to be upset because I don't know how much we'll talk about Bitcoin, but we'll talk about more normal things for sure. And then in June, we're going to bring HR in. And of course, a little different than the talent discussion, because this is more about what the HR best practices and operational needs of a growing business are, and certainly applicable to big business as well. So that's our last session of AHA with Amplify in June. So lots happening. The other 2 things I'll mention before Josh takes the stage is that we have 2 live events coming up too, and they will sell out without a doubt. So April 4th, we're doing a session also in the realm of technology. We are going to have Avante come on. They're going to talk about their entrepreneurial story. They're going to talk about search funds and what a search fund is. And then they're going to talk about how software can help businesses grow and save costs. And so we're very excited to have Avante here in person at our new building, April 4th. So make sure you register, because it is limited capacity and we sell out every single AHA live event. We are having a birthday party on May 30th. And so that is not a CPD opportunity in any way or form, but it is a party. So make sure that you also get your spot there, because there is limited capacity, and we're really excited to be sharing 5+ years of business here at Amplify. And so it's a big celebration. And we pushed it off to patio weather. So fingers crossed that May 30th is patio weather. And that's the day we're going to celebrate 5+ years of being in business. So birthday party, anniversary party, whatever you want to call it. All right. Now it's time to get into the weeds with Josh. So I want to introduce Josh Ponton. He's been with us his entire career. So we're very humbled and excited that he chose Amplify to start his professional journey. I love Josh because he's young, but he's got an executive presence. And when he decided to quit the AmplifyTech team and quit Jesse's team and join me in growth and take a sales role, I was ecstatic. And so Josh is now selling Acumatica and NetSuite to our community and part of the growth team, working with me as well as Amanda and David and Lindsay and all our other amplifiers that many of you know. Josh has the background of actually being part of AmplifyTech and being a consultant and being on implementation. So what better salesperson could you ever want than someone who's actually been there, done it, and knows how hard and challenging an implementation can be. So it's the perfect fit. And I encourage all of you to follow up with Josh at any time to have a chat with him and see if what he is offering and coaching and selling could be a good fit for you. So Josh, over to you.
Thanks so much, Jamie. I'm gonna share my screen here. If you can just confirm that you can see it, that'd be great.
Yes, you were a little sketchy on your voice, but I think you're better now and I can see your screen. Thank you.
Are you able to see? All right, perfect. Thanks so much for the introduction, Jamie. I'll start with a quick introduction to AmplifyTech and how we came to be. So our co-founders, Jesse and Jamie, as I'm sure a lot of you on the call are aware, started Amplify as a fractional CFO business, offering finance leadership to small to medium-sized companies who would benefit from the experience of a full-time CFO, but couldn't necessarily afford one full-time. In order to grow, of course, you need to make good decisions, and no better to take advice from somebody who's been there before you. As our CFOs did an amazing job and helped these companies grow and scale, then came our next service line, which is recruiting services, to help these companies staff with the right talent to sustain that growth. And again, as our recruiting team then did an amazing job, and these companies continued to grow and grow, the tech stack needed to match. And that's what brought me to Amplify, to join a tech team to implement ERPs, again, to sustain that growth. We started off with Oracle NetSuite, and that is an ERP with lots of amazing functionality, lots of standards and industries that they support. We then later continued to grow, and we've added Acumatica to the team. The two ERPs complement each other extremely well. They both have their industries and niches that they're extremely strong in, and some that are better supported by other systems. So they go well together. Most clients, most industries that come through the door, it's great that we have both to offer. So we have a solution. Most industries. Jump into common problems that may make you want to start thinking about an ERP. So what you can see on my screen is many business, as they start to grow and accumulate a larger and larger tech stack, it's because they need a tool for every single process, sometimes multiple tools to accomplish each process. And as you can imagine, a lot of issues come with this. The licensing costs start to go just parabolic. As you keep adding a new tool to accomplish a process area, and you add users in that tool, just goes on and on. It also gets difficult to manage which system is a source of truth. When you're duplicating data in multiple systems, you don't know how accurate, how long ago the entry was made. So it gets difficult to know if that system's information presented to you, is it outdated? Is it up to date? Is it the source of truth? It causes your team to spend so many hours, valuable hours, manually moving the data between the two, duplicating efforts, hours that would be better spent on their actual job, of course. And at the end of the day, all of it leads to a lack of visibility into what's working within your business, what's not working. and it makes it extremely difficult to make an informed and intelligent decision on the best path forward. One thing I like to keep in mind is you may have 10 different systems that are doing an amazing job tracking 10 different data points, but at the end of the day, the data is pretty useless if you can't consume it in a meaningful way. If it's not real time, if you can't drill down into the source of the data to confirm it's reliable and accurate. As Jamie mentioned earlier, big fan of Bitcoin. So my motto is don't trust, verify. And the value of the ERP is having all the data under one roof. You're allowed to drill down into the source data that makes up your reporting. And you don't have to trust the numbers. You can verify yourself that everything's accurate and legitimate. And you have peace of mind going into those decision-making processes. A story I like to share here is a client of ours, prior to moving into an ERP, had a member of their finance team often spending up to 20 hours per week just compiling the data from multiple systems and compiling it into one reporting tool so that management can report on how the business is doing holistically. Between the licensing costs of all of those softwares and the hours that staff member was spending, could you imagine how costly each report was at the end of the day? And now imagine if you could do that all within 3 clicks of a button. And that brings us into a holistic solution. So whether it's NetSuite or Acumatica, the main value proposition of an ERP is everything under one roof. As you can see here, an example on my slide is inventory, your CRM, operations, and most importantly, I'm sure for all the finance individuals on the call, is the reporting. It's a holistic solution. So with the system, what we do is we build, implement, and optimize your business processes using the one integrated source of truth. And it gives you the 360 view of what's happening inside of your business. And you can drill down to the source numbers, no more guesswork. So, I'll quickly jump into what we do. Systems AmplifyTech. So we implement the ERP softwares. That's actually what our department began with. We started off with NetSuite, as I touched on quickly earlier, just because it services a variety of industries. It's extremely customizable and it scales with your growth. We continued and we added Acumatica, and we now also implement that one as well. Again, they work very well together as they both have their industries that they are very, very strong in. We then also noticed during our implementations that although the main value proposition of an ERP is everything under one roof, there are some industry-specific softwares or some legacy softwares that the client is just not willing to part with at this time. So an excellent solution is to integrate that system into the ERP. We worked internally, we got the skill set to do that, and now that's another service offering we have. And finally, we also support clients who are live within their system, whether that be NetSuite or Acumatica, whether it be process area improvement, user training, bug fixing, or just post-go live projects in general. We're here and equipped with the experience to help you get the most out of your investment. A story I'd like to share here is a current client of ours who implemented NetSuite with a partner who was recommended to them. During the implementation, they quickly realized the individuals performing the work were not familiar with Canadian business processes. They struggled around Canadian taxes, especially, and payroll is a big sticking point. The team skipped over the planning and just got them live in the system so they can check the box condition where they were quote unquote live in the system, but they had no real ability to use it. As you can imagine, that came with a lot of frustration. Huge investment. Their team are still using spreadsheets and other manual processes because they're not properly trained. The system's not properly configured. So it was extremely fulfilling to work with them and bring our experience and get them back on track and realize, wow, NetSuite can be the tool it was promised to them as, if it's properly configured and properly trained. So that's one of our success stories on the support side. I know we flew through a lot of content really quick there, so just want to quickly pause to see if there's been any questions at all so far.
Perfect. Thanks, Josh. If anyone has questions, please do let us know on the webinar chat, and I'll make sure that Josh addresses them for you. A couple questions that we've got already, Josh, actually just speaking to the point that you just made on training and how critical that is. I want to talk a bit about that because obviously learning a new system can be difficult for a culture and for a team. Oftentimes they've been in the systems that they're used to and the processes they're used to for a long time. And, you know, setting aside that opportunity to train and to properly learn the new system can be difficult. What are some of the ways that you've been able to make sure that people invest the right amount of time in training?
Great question. So we take a 3-stage approach to training. And that's first, we'll lead the client and exactly what that process would look like within the system. After that, you have an idea, but of course it's not going to be fully intuitive since it is brand new to you. Then secondly, we do a session with us on the call to support you if you forget the next step or not sure what fields to fill, but you'll be the one driving the boat in this session. That way you're actually in the system, you're doing it, and it starts to become muscle memory. And then finally, we do a group training at the end without our support. So all team members involved in the process area on a call together to support each other. And after that's completed and it's successful, we have an idea, okay, the team is familiar with the process and they have the team members to support each other and solution should somebody forget a step along the way. And usually at that point, the client has a level of confidence that they can use the system.
Yeah, and I think that to a large degree from what I've seen with NetSuite and Acumatica, and frankly, you know, most technology, the more that you get comfortable and the more you use it, the more intuitive it is. And that comfort level can help you troubleshoot pretty quick, where you don't necessarily need the formal training, or frankly, you don't even necessarily need to go to that help chat or the help documents once you're comfortable navigating and trying different things out. But a lot of times it's that discomfort and even opening the system and getting dirty in it that people struggle with, you know. And oftentimes too many of the team members aren't exposed to the system until after the go live. And then, you know, what's the definition of go live when sure a system is available and works, but nobody uses it and no one knows how to use it? Is that really a live system, right?
Exactly. The end goal is for the client to be fully self-sufficient. And so making sure at least those key members are trained and can pass on the knowledge to new members who come in without our needing our support.
Awesome.
Is absolutely huge for that user adoption down the road.
Perfect. Great. We'll hold off on the other questions, Josh, and let you keep going. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. Then I'll jump into our stairways for success. So this is the process of figuring out which ERP is best for you. So we always start off with the right fit, and that's getting to know you and your business, your goals, your growth strategy for years to come. And then figuring out if an ERP even makes sense at this point. Perhaps it's better to delay based on your strategy, your company size, your revenue. Perhaps a smaller solution like a Quickbooks makes sense for right now. Perhaps your current processes are working well enough and the investment of an ERP is not necessary at this time. Or on the flip side, perhaps your current processes are breaking down. In order to sustain your growth, you do need something and you need it now. And you need to find for your specific industry, your needs, which one works. After we've determined what the right fit is, which software makes the most sense for you, personalized to you, we'll go through your full needs assessment. So during this process, we'll figure out exactly what you're looking to achieve, your current processes, what you love about your business, what you hate, what needs to improve, what can stay the same. We'll figure out if there's any niche industry-specific softwares that we're going to need to keep and what can or cannot be replaced by an ERP. It's at this point too that we'll begin starting to think about a customized demo. So we'll take away everything we've determined in the needs assessment. We'll also take a look at the ERP specific solutions and start to fill in your processes into how an ERP looks. Quite often we find clients with processes that, they don't love, they don't hate, they're used to. They're happy to keep them, but they're open-minded if there's a better way to handle it within the ERP. So we like to show them what the best practices are, but also remind them that the brilliance of NetSuite and Acumatica is just how customizable they can be. With workflows and scripting, any process area is quote unquote possible with enough time and investment. Using the generic processes that come built out within the system saves a lot of time and a lot of money, as you can imagine. NetSuite specifically comes with over 1,000 hours of industry-specific best practice to whatever edition you purchase. So they've gone through the pain points of figuring out what works, what doesn't work with multiple businesses in your industry. And we all get to benefit from that wealth of knowledge going forward. Just saves a lot of time and hassle in that figuring out stage. Like the name suggests, a customized demo is completely specific to your business. So we'll show your processes in the system and what a solution could look like for you. If that looks great, we go into the proposal and scoping stage, and then finally kick off implementation. In another slide, I'm going to go deeper into our kicking off and implementation. So I'll pause that on that one for now. But one thing I do want to touch on is the assess and accelerate. So once you're live in the system and your businesses grow and continues to scale, we'd like to do a 6-month check-in with your ERP, just to review it, make sure everything's working, and see what we can continue to build on to make it more efficient, more user-friendly, and just to ensure you're getting the most out of it. Jump to our implementation process. So it's one thing to select the right ERP for your business. Another extremely important thing is to select the right implementation partner. We take a 4-pronged approach to implementations, starting with planning. So planning, I cannot stress enough what we truly believe separates us from other partners. This is where we spend the most time, believe it or not, within the implementation. So we plan by process area, whether that be your items and inventory, your order to cash, your procurement, supply chain. We'll go step by step and talk about what works, what doesn't work, and what the system needs to look like. We then input that data into what we call a functional requirement document that we both sign off on before it's passed to our consultants to begin configuration. What we've come to learn is by properly planning and figuring out everything within this stage saves a lot of time and hassle down the road. We don't want to get to testing and figure out there's a huge gap we've completely missed and then need to spend a large amount of time and money to resolve that issue. Of course, it's not impossible that things change and new things come up down the road, but figuring out as much as we can earlier on just saves a lot of headache down the road. And again, it just helped, like, I can't help but think back to the support clients that we get coming to us. Just had some more planning gone into their original implementation, would have saved them a lot of hassle now. Like I mentioned, in the planning, we figure out the FRD, and then we jump into configuration. So based on the requirements we found, we configure your system, and we personalize it to be specific to your company. We show you what the product looks like after we personalized it. We go through with you, we get about 90% there, we like to stay. But there's things like perhaps you want to see some different layout on your form. You want to have a new custom field added to record some information that's specific to your business. So we make those changes there before we move into testing. At the testing stage, that's where we need to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Once you're live in the system, we don't want to be testing. We want it to be smooth just for user adoption. When they're using it, if it constantly breaks and they can't fulfill their specific role and process, it's really demoralizing, and we understand that. That's why a really big lift is done in the testing phase to make sure once we get over that, we have confidence that the system will work. That doesn't mean we can't continue to improve it, but it's in a state where users can fulfill what they need to do. During testing, we go end to end. So we test every single process, fill out every single field, submit every single form, and approve everything that requires approving. We make sure things specific to you, like what reminders you want to see, what notifications you want to have, whether that's on your dashboard or emailed to you, just ensure everything works. And in our testing phase, we also train you. So by training you in the testing phase, you help test us as well. Perhaps you do things in a different way than us consultants. That's a good, maybe not the exact perfect process, but it's good because finding those other ways, perhaps you find other things that come up now and save us some hassle down the road. And then go live. So you're live in the system, all of your data has been imported, all of your roles have been configured. We know users can see and feel exactly what they're supposed to. And it's now time to be using your ERP. So we do offer support for the first month, just because we know the larger team is now in the system. Some things might come up, and we're there to hold your hand and walk through anything needed. All right, before I jump over, Jamie, I just wanted to check in and see if there's any questions at all at this point.
Yes, for sure. Thank you, Josh. I have a question in terms of that planning. So obviously, a lot of times us as business leaders and users of systems have grandiose plans and big wish lists and big dreams. But we all know that if you try to boil the ocean and do everything at once, that can lose momentum and frankly, the time and money that it takes to get everything perfect and everything done in the first go is usually not within the means of most of our teams and clients. So talk to me a bit about that step approach and the balance of, of having certain phases and then leaving certain things for later.
Absolutely. So the key benefits of planning by process area, it ensures that, instead of doing it all together, that the right people are on the right calls for each process area. So of course, on the supply chain side, you'll want your supply chain manager there. And it gives us the ability to make sure nothing gets missed by process area. And then it also helps spread out the lift, the burden. So not having everybody on every single call. We understand that during the ERP implementation, you also have your day job going on the same time. And so it spreads out, it divides the work amongst the team, and it just keeps everybody fresher.
Excellent. And I think another thing that is worth pointing out is, when people are prioritizing what they're going to plan for and what they're going to include in that initial implementation, it really comes back to the same anchor that should be used for every business decision throughout your business. And that's thinking about the strategy and growth of you as an organization. And so those things that are key to your strategy and growth and ensuring that you're hitting your plan are things that should be included up front. And those things that are more nice to have and could create efficiencies or a better employee experience, but aren't as direct to the strategy and growth, maybe those are pushed off to a second phase or next year or what have you. And it's really important to outline that and make priority decisions, because very few companies can do everything that they wish for and want in that first go. I mean, it would be great, but you'd have to backfill, bring extra resources, and there's a big cost. And a lot of times spreading that cost out is more practical. Not to mention the fact that I know, Josh, you've had to help me with our NetSuite, for example, a few times. And a lot of times what you think you want to begin with is different than what you end up needing or or wanting in the long run, because once you see the possibilities within the system, and once you start using the data and using the reporting and using the decision-making information, your needs and your plan change. And so with that in mind, it's good to kind of scale back and to do a step approach, I think. Any other comments on that?
Yeah, I just add, you alluded to it, Jamie, but going through the first implementation, you learn so much, you get a lot more familiar with the system, and you're right, your priorities do change. And we quite often find those stage 2 and stage 3 become a lot easier now that you have that familiarity. So best to save yourself from burning out all at once, gain that knowledge and experience, and then come back more efficient for the nice to haves and the next steps.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny because Neil and I were talking at the last AHA with Amplify about how, the funny thing is, and nobody wants to hear it when they're considering getting an ERP, but it is a journey, and it's kind of a never-ending journey. And at first, as a business leader or a business owner that's paying for it, that sounds like a horrible, horrible statement. But the actual experience is, it's a journey, because you always want more and recognize what more you can do, and you get better and better and better with the system and with your needs. And so it sounds like a never-ending pain that you'll constantly be implementing new modules or implementing new opportunities, new reporting. But really, each and every one of those is not to be cheesy, but it's amplifying you and making you quicker and better at the decision making that's advancing your growth and your strategy. So it sounds daunting and not exciting, but once you're in, if you're doing it with a phased approach and you're doing it with responsibility, it's actually quite incredible what a difference it can make to growing your business. We've certainly seen that at Amplify, the ability to make decisions. And frankly, 100% my fault, no one else's fault. I got locked out of the system this week, and I have felt like I had a hand tied behind my back, because I was trying to make decisions, I was trying to get data, and I couldn't get in the system. And again, entirely my fault, not at all Oracle's fault, not at all AmplifyTech's fault. I somehow I didn't know where I got married. I'm pretty sure I do. I must have spelled it wrong when I put in the original question. So I got kicked out of the system, and it did feel like someone cut off my right hand, and I had to work with my left all week. It was crazy. Okay, we have another question, Josh. Does the implementation plan include a cutover of legacy data? How much effort is required to transform the historic data so that it can be put into the new ERP? And so I know that Jesse has some strong opinions about legacy data, and I'm happy to try my best to quote his, but if you'd like to take the question first, go for it.
Yes, so that's absolutely right. During the planning phase, we do discuss the data migration process, we call it. So we'll go over what data you'd like to bring into the new system, and then also how many years back. So do we need 1 year? Do we need 2 years? Is it 3 years of legacy we need? So we'll work with you on that one. Data migration is also a pretty big lift on the client side, because it involves exporting out from your current systems. Depending on how easy that may or may not be, it can add some time. And then also cleaning the data if it's in a bit of a mess. So we like to build that into the schedule, so you know when will be a big lift on your end, so you can resource accordingly for that. But on our end, we'll provide you with templates that are completely customized and personalized to your business. So it only shows the fields that you need to fill in. We'll show which ones are mandatory, must-haves, and some that are optional. If you have access to the data, let's go ahead and fill it out and import it in. And then after the data is scrubbed and provided to us, we handle the actual importation process.
Nice. So a couple other just practical tips, having advised some clients on, how much legacy data to bring into the system. I think some of the drivers for that decision, which is, there's not a best practice or a one answer fits all by any means, but a couple things that I would think about if I was implementing a new system and facing that question is, first and foremost, where does your data sit right now? And is that system one that you could potentially keep access to, and it's affordable and not a big burden on the business to just have access to that system? So if the answer is it's affordable, not a big deal, So for example, if you run QBO, right? Keeping one user on QBO for the next 1 to 5 years is really immaterial cost, no big deal at all. And so that helps drive your decision, because if you can access that historical data on the rare occasion that you need it in a system that everyone knows how to use, then that's going to make a big difference in terms of how much effort and money and time you put into putting extra years into your ERP. But on the other hand, if you're moving from an ERP and that's a high cost to a new ERP, that's going to be a very different decision factor. Or if you're in a situation where you have to take the data and download it into some crappy Excel that nobody would ever be able to read or figure out how to use if they did need the data, that's going to make a big difference too. The other thing that I would think about is reporting and what you are going to be using that data for. So obviously, first and foremost, what are your reporting requirements? Because at a minimum, that data probably needs to be in the ERP at a relatively detailed level. But when you start going back and you're not doing detailed reporting and you don't have comparison requirements, maybe you bring the data in at one level higher, right? So maybe it's at the notes to the financial statement level, or maybe it's at the GL account level, or maybe it's at the financial statement line item level. It's not necessarily at the transaction level. And so I think reporting, both internal reporting for operational decisions and analysis, but obviously also compliance reporting and external reporting would be a massive indicator as to what data you need. Because if you're reporting on something regularly in order to make decisions or report to the board or report to the executive, goodness, you don't want to be going into 3 systems to get the data and the comparisons. And frankly, you'll end up with errors and mistakes and it'll be a nightmare. But on the other hand, if it's only for that one time that you're going to randomly analyze something and you're not reporting it on a monthly or quarterly basis, that's going to be a very different situation. So I think things like that can help with that decision. But unfortunately, there's not a one answer fits all. All right, I'll shut up for a few minutes, Josh, and we'll, I've got some questions on cleaning the data, but I'm going to wait because I don't want you to run out of time.
No worries. I just want to quickly add for the
Oh, you're cutting out a little bit.
reporting the historical trial about just like, oh no, am I better now?
Yeah.
Yep, you can hear me?
Yeah, just repeat what you were just saying. I didn't catch it personally.
For sure. I was just adding to the reporting. That definitely will drive, especially for comparisons. Typically we see clients request 2 years for historical trial balance import, but lately we've been seeing longer just because, COVID threw a huge curveball, and those aren't necessarily the years you want to compare to if, especially if you're in the hospitality side or tourism. So we'll work with you on that one, depending on your requirements. Okay. I just want to confirm, Jamie, that it's still good on audio.
Yeah, it's good right now. Thanks,
Perfect.
Josh.
Yep, no problem. Okay, so next I want to talk about what separates us specifically as a partner, what you'd like to know. It's so crucial. The statistics are mind-blowing. 49% of ERP implementations get done on time, so less than half. Again, in my personal opinion, that comes down to the planning. When you're figuring things out later on and then need to go back to the drawing board and figure out a solution for it, it's extremely difficult at that stage. And again, it adds more time and more scope and more money to the project. The next one that's a bit mind-blowing is 50% fail the first time around altogether. So you've made this huge investment, you've pulled together the resources, or attempted to at least, and there's nothing to show for it at the end, which is really demoralizing. And then finally, 65% go over budget. So like I said, without proper planning, without a proper solution outlined at the start, when you need to add on modules because you figured out a gap later on, the cost typically goes up. So selecting your partner, Somebody who has industry experience in your business's specific industry, somebody who understands business in general. So we're really lucky on that piece at Amplify that we have a wealth of knowledge that we get to rely on. These numbers are a little outdated, I do think now, but over 135 years of collective CPA experience, which for me at least is just really difficult to wrap my head around. An average of 15 years per person, 5 years holding that CFO title, and then greater than 120 collective business leader experience. So we understand Canadian businesses. If I don't specifically, I know a team member does. And if that team member doesn't, I know another team member does. We understand we have a great background of different industries. So something to keep in mind when you're selecting your partner is you want to ask yourself, are they meeting their deadlines? Are they realistic? Are they doing enough, spending enough time in the planning phase so that huge gaps aren't revealing themselves later on and derailing your project? Another stat I like to use it without getting too scary here is that, 52% of the Fortune 500 firms since 2000 are just gone. They've went out of business. And we know that the market is shifting, it's clear. And we have to ask ourselves, why did these businesses fail? Lack of data comes to mind. Lack of organization, potentially. They didn't have the right vision. Perhaps the numbers presented to them weren't accurate. They weren't real. Perhaps they were just unwilling to transition. So they were stuck in their current ways. BlackBerry comes to mind, and they didn't transition with the changing environment. And we get it, even today, many businesses are really straining their resources, trying to manage several systems and applications. So when data is difficult to rely on, it's almost impossible to make those strategic decisions. And that's likely why the ERP market is looking to double by the year 2026. So it's growing incredibly rapidly. We believe with the changing environment, business leaders are starting to realize how important that accurate data truly is. And they're starting to make the investment from now on. And this is still a relatively new space. Cloud ERPs, it went from almost none to a whole bunch very quickly, and it's growing at a very rapid rate. So after those kind of numbers and statistics there, Jamie, I just want to check in and see if anything has popped up.
As you mentioned, yeah, I have to get you new numbers because our year's experience is far bigger. Those are from when we were, I think, a team of 25, 30, and now we're at 45 people. So I owe you that. And this is a good reminder that I'm late giving it to you. It's interesting. I don't know if this is the right time to ask this question, but we're talking about ERPs and how it's still a growing space, and the cloud ERP in particular is actually a young space when it comes to technology. But at the same time, obviously, a lot of people that are looking at an ERP for the first time are on the tech stacks, like the QBOs and the Xeros, etc. And and those are growing and advancing at incredible rates of innovation and accessibility. And we obviously have a ton of clients that are very well served on those tech stacks, and it's exactly the right fit for their size business. But what do you think drives, and I know there's not one answer or even a top 5 answer necessarily, but just based on your stories and your and what you've seen, what drives a company to get more from having an ERP than being on that tech stack?
Great question. So reporting, of course, is a huge piece on that tech stack. If it's a bunch of systems that don't speak to each other, that's absolutely almost impossible for them to do. So that's a big reason that they'll look at an ERP and really see the value in it. Also, as their businesses start to grow, they need more control, better defined processes, better roles. So one of the great things about NetSuite and Acumatica is the roles are completely customizable. So we know we can define exactly what those users can and cannot see. So if there's any sensitive information, there's no concerns there. You can still give your staff members access to the tool so they can perform their job without any risk. And then I touched on processes. So really defining and standardizing those processes within the ERP is a really big efficiency. As the team grows and new members come on, it just makes the process so much more effective when you define your approvals. So, regardless of who's submitting the purchase order as an example, it's getting approved by the right people before it's communicated to the vendor. So just gives you peace of mind that the things that are making your business successful are being followed. And yeah.
Yeah, I think those are some great examples. I find for myself, having sat in the CFO seat and the accountant seat, that a big part of it is what I call multis, right? And so when you're getting into a state where you have multi-regions, multi-services, multi-products, multi-legal entities, etc., you really need to be able to slice and dice your data in different reporting in different forms. And certainly, I haven't found an app that links into QBO or Xero that does a great job of consolidation or of reporting of the multis, as I was talking about. And so that gets tough, because if let's say you have just 4 or 5 legal entities, which is not a lot for most growing businesses, and maybe those legal entities are based on region because of tax, etc. Certainly, your advisor would recommend that in QBO, you probably have a different instance for each of those legal entities. And then there is the opportunity to use a Reach or a Fathom to do consolidation, but it doesn't give you the chance to do that slice and dice analysis. And the reality is, let's say you're selling widget A, and you sell widget A in legal entity 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now you want to do a report on widget A, but guess what you're going to end up doing? You're going to be creating that report in a spreadsheet. And so even if you have a fantastic controller and a fantastic CFO, it's going to take them a couple business days to triage the data, create the Excel, put it in a form that readers can read and make decisions, probably review and validate, because there's no controls on that. And now we're talking 3 to 5 business days to get a simple number and a simple report, which in my position using an ERP, that I would have that number. If I didn't have the report pre-configured, I would ask you, Josh, or Jody, or any of the experts that know how to do reports. And frankly, it's sad that I can't do my own reports, because honestly, I should be able to. But when you have great people, you're lazy and you delegate. But I would get it within an hour, and I would have an answer within an hour. But if I was on QBO, I would have an answer 3 business days would be like an excellent response time. So that's a good example, in my opinion. If you're at multis, and whatever that multi is, legal entities, services, products, regions, whatever that multi is, once you're at that level, you should really be in an ERP. And if you're not, you're handicapping your decision making, is my biased opinion. All right, I'll let you get back at it, Josh.
Yeah, just on that piece there around the multis, it brings to mind as a part of our personalized demos for multi-subsidiary or multi-currency customers, just showing them within the system how with a push of button, you can display the data in the parent company's currency or the child company's currency, or consolidate between, X number of entities. How excited everybody gets, because like you mentioned, Jamie, it is a huge pain point in those lower tier systems. I will jump into ERP trends. So like I mentioned, 50% of the Fortune 500 firms are out of business. The ERP space is growing extremely rapidly. So this is just a visualization of that, a forecast for the future as well. So this right now, it seems to be the landscape everybody is shifting towards. ERPs, whether that be on-premise or cloud. Typically it is cloud these days, but they're growing. And it showed the comparison here that on-premise is losing that kind of market share, and in the cloud is growing quite rapidly. The main value proposition of leaving the on-premise and going to the cloud is just the ability to access from anywhere in the world. It's quite amazing being able to take your laptop with you, and these systems have incredibly security networks built out for them. So being able to take your laptop with you. A client call I had earlier last week, he was calling in from Paris and he was able to use his NetSuite instance right there. So that flexibility and freedom is definitely a huge appeal. And as the cloud network becomes incredibly secure, one of the posted stats for Acumatica was 99.7% uptime over the past year. So it's incredible numbers. So the cloud is extremely reliable. In the modern world, fast Wi-Fi has taken over the nation. Devices, it can be a smartphone or a computer. They're so prevalent in today's society. So it's no wonder to me that cloud systems are starting to take over. Finally, we have by the year 2026, the global ERP market is expected to nearly double, $78.4 billion. So it seems like a hot commodity right now. So great time to be having these discussions, and I'm thankful for everybody who joined today's call. And I'd like to open the floor up to some Q&A now.
Perfect. Thanks, Josh. So we have about 8 more minutes. So if anyone has some questions, please make sure you get them typed in so that we can do our best to hit all of them. In the meantime, I mentioned that we've got a question on the data and cleaning the data. So certainly one of the interesting things about ERP implementations, which I think is logical and common, but absolutely causes scope creep and all kinds of issues, is that oftentimes people get into an ERP implementation and they quickly decide to revamp processes and relook at their whole business, which is great that it triggers that, but that's generally not included in the timeline or the pricing. So that's where you get some disconnect and misalignment. And similarly, when it comes to data, we've often seen, and there's questions about it, that as you go to put data into the new system, you realize how messed up your data is and how messy it is and how it's unusable. And you might have kind of known that before, but you didn't really appreciate it entirely in terms of mapping and integrity and completeness and all the rest. And so then all of a sudden you end up with almost a second project of reasonable magnitude sometimes, which is data cleansing and data integrity, etc. So talk to me a bit about how you manage expectations of clients, and when this happens, what you do to keep it as tight to the scope, as tight to the timeline, as tight as to the price as possible, but yet still recognizing that putting crappy old data into a new system is going to end up with some pretty big issues in the long run.
Yeah, so at first it's just identifying that so everybody's on the same page. That's huge during the planning phase, is setting expectations. So, maybe you want to put 10 years of historicals into the system, but, do we need 10 years of historical? Is the data in a state where you can realistically even pull together 10 years of historical? So we'll go through that. And then it's also, we have some tips and tricks that we'll share with cleansing data. And in the modern world, there are AI tools that also assist with that. At the end of the day, you know your data better than anybody else. So we like to leave that with you to go through that cleansing process. Something that may not be meaningful to our eyes or an AI tool's eyes could be meaningful for you. So we really don't want that to get lost. And it's also sharing from past experiences just how time consuming this can be. I think that's often overlooked or underestimated, but it is a pretty sizable lift going through each line of data and ensuring it's in the right format. So sharing that with you so you understand what the lift is, making sure your team has the capacity at that stage in the project to complete that lift, just so we stay on track and meet the goal that we previously set.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. So we have a question. Do you see the introduction of generative AI tools enablers on the roadmap for either Acumatica or NetSuite, such as natural language interface that would allow a business leader to ask the ERP for answers? So curious to hear your discussion on this. And then funny enough, Jesse and I very briefly were touching on AI and ERPs the other day, and we got cut off and couldn't finish the conversation, but what was clear is that we didn't necessarily agree. So this is a hot topic, and I don't think there's a lot more questions and answers in terms of where things are going to go. But Josh, what are you seeing and hearing from Acumatica and NetSuite, and what are your thoughts on
So,
AI and ERPs and how they're going to work together, etc.?
so first of all, I think absolutely 100%. I think AI is something right now, especially it's kind of the world is a little bit skeptical of what can it do, what can't it do. I personally think it's going to make the tools even more powerful. We're starting to see it implemented already within both Acumatica and NetSuite, whether that's the AI, reading your receipts and entering that information into an expense report for you. I think there's going to be lots of areas for optimization like that with AI tools, and I'm sure it's in the roadmaps right now and already implemented in some pieces.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely the NetSuite upgrade that just happened, and we have a blog on it if anyone wants to read. I think 80% of the items that were on that, and that's upgrade that's happening like right now this month type of thing. 80% or more of it was AI related. And certainly when you pull up the roadmap, or if you go to the conferences, or just even their webinars, a huge portion of the time and excitement is about AI. So NetSuite is a front runner, and AHA with Amplify, when we were talking to Neil, he pointed out that certainly Oracle and Microsoft have invested for years, right? And the funny thing is that ChatGPT came to the front and really changed the landscape, and certainly is user-friendly, accessible, and an amazing tool. But they're not necessarily ahead, they're just more ambitious in a different way than Oracle and Microsoft. And one could argue that Microsoft and of course Microsoft is also has the ChatGPT right there with it. So there's a lot happening in the space, and Acumatica probably is a bit behind Oracle, not unsurprising in the sense that Oracle is one of the biggest companies in the world, but definitely from a practical perspective, absolutely on top of it, and making sure that their clients aren't going to fall behind and are going to have access at a pace that's competitive with all the other ERPs. So I think it's exciting. I mean, one of the discussions that I was having both with Jesse and just with another actual system, a SaaS creator company, was talking about, are we still going to need integrations if we have AI, right? And so my question is, if you have AI and you can ask a question, then why do you necessarily need to have an integration that has like real programming? Because you could pull data from NetSuite, you could pull data from Acumatica, you could pull, if you happen to have a best-in-class payroll that's separate than your ERP, you could pull from there, and you could pull from, maybe you're using Salesforce, because most people would suggest that's the best CRM, right? So instead of having all these systems talk and spending the money on those integrations, could you just have an AI that pulls and reports? And so that was the discussion. And one of the good points that came up was mapping. So obviously, a lot of the work with integrations is mapping, and whether or not you literally code to map and you literally like plug and play and connect or not, that mapping, absolutely, the effort and the integrity of the mapping doesn't change, right? Because whether you're coding and plugging and playing, that mapping has to be right. So if employee 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is employee 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in NetSuite, it better be employee 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in your payroll, and it better be called that same employee number in Salesforce if you're reporting how that salesperson is doing on their KPIs. And so that mapping and integrity, which is a lot of the work when it comes to integration, absolutely doesn't change. AI is not going to make that better. In fact, I think there's a lot of risk that people won't see that issue and then end up with reports that are completely wrong and have no integrity. So that's a good point to think about when you're talking about this technology and what it could mean. Another point that got brought up was actually in relation to payroll, that that plug and play and true integration does offer more security. And so when it comes to private information and payroll information and employee information, You know, we're probably a long ways from AI alone having a ask and tell reporting opportunity because of privacy. And so making sure that AI doesn't break the privacy rules or the integrity of protecting your clients, your employees, et cetera. And so certainly, while AI might be technically able to do something soon, very, very soon, that doesn't mean that it's the right thing for a business to do, because you have to think about security and privacy. We're certainly not going to get into cyber today, but oh my God, how crazy is the cybersecurity and risks that people are facing, right? And so you got to be very careful with the systems you're using and how you're using it and what data you're putting into those systems. And so I think that's another maybe delay in terms of what AI can do, or maybe it's a bottleneck in terms of what it can do. Any thoughts on that, Josh?
Yeah, it's so new and it's evolving so quickly. I'm just really excited to see its level of involvement in ERPs. And yeah, all the concerns you expressed, Jamie, I definitely agree with, but I'm a big fan of AI, and I think they'll find a pretty complex and impressive solution. So excited to see.
Awesome. So we're officially out of time. I'm just going to quickly share my screen again so you guys can see what's coming up in terms of webinars. And so obviously a lot of you probably have to go for your next meeting, but for those of you that have a second, I just want to remind you that next week, Thursday, Tech Thursday, we're going to do a comparison of emerging ERPs. So we're going to really get candid. We have no bias. We love NetSuite. We love Acumatica. We're partners on both. So it'll be a real conversation that you probably can't hear from very many people, because if you're not a partner of both, most likely you have a bias, and you've earned the right to have one, right? So we're very excited to be able to share that with you. And we do think that NetSuite and Acumatica are the two top emerging EIPs. There's a third that can sometimes be considered great, but is still a third place contender. March 21st, we are going to do a live demo of NetSuite. And so obviously it'll be a bit industry agnostic, so not at the same level of quality you would get with Josh if you were doing the sales process, but it keeps you out of the commitment and gets you a sneak peek and a chance to look at the software without actually being committed to a sales process. So a really great opportunity, and not one that happens every day. And the same thing is available on March 28th with Acumatica. So looking at an industry agnostic but very practical and real look at what the system can do. So very happy to have you guys join us for Tech Thursdays. Be sure to attend, and if you don't get a chance to attend, make sure to look at the video after. We will send CPD certificates and video links for all sessions, and we are very thrilled that you joined us, and we will let it wrap because we're 3 minutes over. Thanks, Josh.